All right, everyone, this is Steve Cooper from theconservativemonster.com. Tonight I have a very interesting interview with Lee from Georgia, and her older cousin was on McCarthy's list of communists, and I was speaking to her on Facebook, and I was very intrigued by this, and I wanted to do an interview. And so, how are you, Lee? How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Steve.
So tell us now, your older cousin, okay, his name was what? Joe, you said?
His name was Joseph. We called him Joseph.
Joseph, okay. So now, he was on this list, and you were telling me earlier he was a private businessman.
Right. He was in the insurance industry. He was in insurance business. He made a pretty good living on that private industry, but he was an activist way back before it even got popular to be one in the 60s.
Wow. So when was he an activist?
Well, he was born 1902. And, in fact, interesting, he was born into a very traditional Southern family. I mean, it was God, guns, and clinging to your religion back when it was popular to do so. And as a young man, the way I understand the family related it to me, before I actually met him in a social sense and thing, but he was really indoctrinated during the popularity right after the Russian Revolution in the early parts of the 20th century, I think, and as a young man, he somehow or another bought into that belief, and from the 1920s on through till he passed away, he was a card-carrying socialist. He was a member of the Socialist Party, but also he was a very staunch supporter of the Soviet Union. And in my presence at times, I think he spoke very glowingly of Stalin. I mean, Stalin to him was the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, well, that's common, and now, you know what it was, too, back then, the media would lie about the atrocities in the Soviet Union, so I don't know, was he ever aware that Stalin saw...
Yeah, because when I had met him when I was real tiny, we'd have family reunions, and but when I actually met him, began to talk to him one-on-one, he began to try to recruit me into the Communist Youth Movement, was when I was in college. This was in the early 1970s. We had attended a funeral of a fellow relative, and my father was friends with him, though my father was nowhere near a communist, nothing like that. But he introduced me to Joseph, and from there on, it became a social thing. He would drop up from another state and visit. In fact, he would even send me, while I was in college, he'd send me little stipends, little money off and on, which is a relative I appreciated. I was in my early 20s. But when he began to talk to me and try and indoctrinate me, well, I asked him, I said, well, how can you support Stalin or defend Stalin and what went on in the Soviet Union right after the Bolshevik Revolution, and certainly, what Stalin did in the Ukraine, starving his own people. And I can't remember verbatim what he said, but he rationalized it with, he didn't use the term, well, you have to, to make an omelet, you have to break some eggs. But he more or less defended the fact, well, these were enemies. He didn't use the word like Russia. He said they were enemies, and it was to kind of correct the thing, the centuries of misrule by the Tsars. Mm-hmm. But he rationalized. I mean, the destruction, genocide of millions, of Russians and Ukrainians, and he was just very cavalier about it.
Well, that was the propaganda that they would use, is call them reactionaries or capitalists, and they were saying that that's why they were sort of punished and persecuted and executed by Stalin. But
I was just struck to think, just even at that time, I can remember, being a 22-year-old, and just how blasé he was about that kind of murder.
Right.
And but yet, and of course, most people opposed Hitler and the Nazis and what they did to the Jews and other minorities. But and rightly so, he was very, very adamantly opposed to Hitler and the Nazis. Of course, who wouldn't be if you got any brains? But when it came to the genocide in the Soviet Union and the communists, perfect rationalization. I mean, you excuse it away.
But now, was he aware that Hitler and Stalin, I'm sure he was aware, Hitler and Stalin had a pact together because they were really both socialists. You had German socialism and Russian socialism. So there was a pact. The American communists didn't have a problem with Hitler until, Hitler broke the pact.
Right, exactly. In fact, Nathan, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say that because I can remember, family talking about Joseph like that and how, in fact, he admitted to me that he was against the war and thing, but it wasn't so much, he never mentioned, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and we had the right to go to war and thing, but he did confess to me, that he was opposed to us getting into war until Hitler attacked the Soviet Union.
That's
and then
right.
He was just, in fact, he talked more of the atrocity and the aggression, I think, how dare the Nazis, attack the thing, the Soviet Union and their betrayed, so to speak, according to his words, Stalin, but never very much as far as, what, Europe had to deal with of the Nazis.
Wow. Yeah, what was his name? Joseph Goebbels used to compare Lenin to Hitler. And, he took heat for that. The Germans didn't want him ever mentioning that again. So it was a rivalry between Russian socialism and German socialism. But I think it was more of a rivalry. They both are responsible for millions of deaths.
Well, it was just, I don't know, it might have been, maybe a decade ago, and of course I was raised like most Americans. You had the Bolsheviks on one end, the communists on the other, you had the Nazis, and I believe most Americans, you don't want to live under either,
Right.
But it was later on when I was out of college and I was reading and doing research, and I kept up with this, and where I read something one day, and it really hit home, and of course you're probably aware of this, but the fact that Nazism or fascism, and the German version of fascism, Nazism, and communism, Marxism, or socialism, there really is no different. They're both socialist.
Right.
And you run into so many Americans who really don't know that they are similar.
Well, yeah, because ever since the end of World War II, they demonized fascism and tried to isolate it from communism. But like I said, Joseph Goebbels compared Hitler to Lenin, and right there they're saying we're basically the same. And eventually Hitler would have taken over everything anyway. It would have been total communism anyway. But now, so what was your cousin's views on religion? Did he ever, attack religions or say religion is an obstacle to communism?
Yes, definitely. And one thing, too, I didn't know if I should bring that up. I didn't want to get off topic. But that is one of the tirades or the rants I would have to sit through. Well, I didn't have to, but he would go on the tangent. And once again, and I don't want to stereotype. You have, obviously Jimmy Carter is not the traditional view that most of the world has of the South and Southerners. And but we're like every other part of the country. You have there's one kind of you can't stereotype people, but because we were very Christian evangelical family and had been for 200 years. He was raised in that environment, and I was too, even though I wasn't a devout Christian at the time. I was a college student, and but part of his tirade I'd have to sit through along with the communist indoctrination and blah, 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 was the fact he would get on this anti-God tirade, and it wasn't, to me, I was really struck by how virulent it was. I mean, he was for a man who did not believe there was a God, he had a one-on-one vendetta against the deity.
Right.
And of course, the thing that he was an atheist and anti-religion, Christianity, and anti-Judaism. I mean, just anyone who believed in things and if you're a monotheist, and he was against that.
Now, did he ever have any or speak about the occult at all?
No, in fact, he never did do that. But now I don't know. Now I'm not that familiar with professional magicians, as such. I know there's an organization there.
Black magic.
But I've heard, some people, without getting off into this area and thing as far as magic, it's based on something really going behind the scenes there, or it's just tricks, smoke and mirrors. But he was also a member of this professional magicians organization. I don't know.
I knew knew it. I knew because first of all, many of these communists are into the occult. Hitler was an occultist.
Yes.
So they don't publicly talk about it, but many of them are. And I just got this vibe that he had something to do with the occult or magic, the black magic, and that's why I asked.
Yes.
And so he was a magician.
He was a member. In fact, I think he would do some tricks in front of me and some of the other family members, and of course, being people, we'd ask him, well, how did you do that? And he would not tell us. And he said they take an oath that they don't reveal this, but he was very serious about this. He would do this he didn't do it professionally, but he would do it on the side, meetings and stuff, and I think where he would go. But the virulent, vicious, anti-God member of a professional magician's organization, and along with his socialist Marxist beliefs. And I'm going to tell you too, Steve, I think it's not an area that I've ever done any research to, but I've also wondered if there was a connection with the magician and the magic, the paganism and thing. But like I say, that's not an area that I have done much research on since he and I parted ways. Mm-hmm. I did go on after I'm going to get ahead of you, but I did go on years after that, and I did my own research after I got out of college as far as researching Marxism, socialism, the fascism, and whatnot. I just went on myself because it so intrigued me. I said I wanted to learn more, and of course, thanks to him, he set me on the road to my own discovery about what was going on in this country.
Wow. And so, when did he pass away?
He passed away in the early 1980s, and what is interesting about that, and once again, I will get off topic, bring you back on topic if I get off of it. Yeah. But one of the footnotes about this man, and before we actually parted company, I went on, got out of college, and went on and, got married, had kids, and then, but the last few times I spoke with him personally, though he was still promoting the Marxist communist thing, and this is where I don't really know where this connection, because I never have really, I haven't done much research into this. I'm like everybody else. I watch documentaries, see the movies, and read, stuff online. He was on this tangent of the JFK assassination. He was a personal supporter and had gone down to New Orleans with the Garrison, was the gentleman's last name? Right, yes. Was trying to investigate. And to me now, I don't know if this Garrison gentleman was saying the government was involved behind the assassination or what it was, but my cousin was very much in the camp of these people who contended that I guess that the government was behind this, and because I never got into that. Never did. Well, you see, that's the propaganda to cover up. That's what communists are very clever, and they use that as deception to confuse people, to distract them from the fact that possibly Cuban intelligence and Russian KGB were the real reasons, but real assassins, and that Oswald was working for them. And they're very clever. They do that with 9/11 also. They're trying to say that all those truthers, those 9/11 truthers, they're all communists, they're left-wingers, and the deception out there is that, to deflect blame away from Islam and Russia, to blame the CIA and Israel for 9/11. Just being online and looking, in fact, there is a very prominent, I won't name the website, but this guy is very, very popular. In fact, he's very, 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 very pro, I don't want to say pro-terrorist, but he's very, very pro